My father once told me a story, a whisper of forgotten times when dragons, a remote and powerful clan of gods, would sometimes grant the wishes of mortals. If that's true, I thought, my small hands clasped tight in prayer. Then please, please hear me now. I knelt before the cold, imposing statue of the dragon god. My heart a frantic drum against my ribs. Please, help me, I want my father to return, and I hope you can protect me just like he does. And also, there was one more thing, a desperate whispered plea, I beg of you. Please seal my powers away. In the echoing silence of the chapel, a tiny winged creature blinked its curious blue eyes at me. A soft rustle of wings, a flash of white, and then nothing but the fading light and the flapping of crows against a darkening sky. A decade passed in the blink of an eye. The gentle rocking of the carriage did little to soothe the ache in my soul. Through the window, the endless trees blurred into a green smear. A gruff voice from outside shattered the quiet. How long have we been walking? Another voice answered, dripping with disdain. Not long enough. The old lord lives in the countryside after all. Tusk, this unlucky wench. Even marrying her off is such a pain. Unlucky wench, that's what I was to them, just a burden to be discarded. My sister's smile was a beautiful, poisonous flower. She leaned in close, her voice a silken trap. Don't worry, my dear sister. His lordship may be old and unsightly, but he'll surely treat you with generosity. Her fingers, cold as ice, tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet her gaze. You see, he already has 7 wives, but he doesn't mind taking you in as the 8th. What a blessing this is for you. Blessing, my stomach churned. This felt like a death sentence. I tried to pull away, my eyes searching desperately for my mother. Mother, I spotted her by the door and scrambled towards her. My wedding dress rustling around my ankles. Mother, I need to talk to you. As I reached for her arm, my last hope. Smack. The sound echoed in the sudden silence. My head snapped to the side, a stinging heat blooming on my cheek. I stared at her, my mother, in utter disbelief. Her face was a mask of cold fury. We fought tirelessly for this opportunity, so treasure it, Pearl. Her words were colder than the slap. My father appeared, his face contorted with rage, his voice a thunderclap that made me flinch. But I'm only 17 and he's already 5th. He roared, grabbing my wrist in a bruising grip. What right do you have to speak? You're a troublesome little thing yourself. Looks like I'll have to teach you a lesson. The world swam before my eyes, the pain in my wrist and the ache in my heart blurring into one. I could only manage a pained, hollow smile as darkness threatened to swallow me whole. My mother stepped forward, her voice cutting through the haze. Let me remind you once more, her words were sharp, precise daggers. Her face was the sole reason we were able to sell her for such a fetching price. It is truly a remarkable deal. She is to leave tomorrow. Her final command was delivered with chilling finality. If she resists, tie her up in the carriage. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. There's no need for that. I can go by myself. Mother, her name was ash in my mouth. The carriage was a cage, and the maid assigned to me was my warden. Suddenly, an inky black smoke began to pour from my skin, coiling around me like venomous snakes. The maid shrieked, scrambling back in terror. Ah, are you kidding me? I don't want to die here. She fumbled with the carriage door, throwing it open. As the guards outside began to scream, die by your own flames, you pyromaniac witch. Their hatred washed over me, a familiar, suffocating tide. You should just die here. The carriage shook violently as the horses reared in panic. Their terrified whinnies mixing with the screams of men. Dr. Dragon, it's a dragon. Run, run for your lives. Through the window I saw it, a massive, terrifying beast descending from the sky. A dragon? Why would a dragon appear here of all places? Panic seized me. I have to get out of here fast. My hands scrabbled at the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. It's locked. Of course, they were afraid I was going to run away and rob them of their money. They left me here to die. A grim resolve settled over me. Right, fire. But as I turned, my reflection in the window warped. A single, colossal eye stared back at me. Its pupil a vertical slit, ancient and terrifying. A voice echoed in my mind, deep and resonant, my bride. Who is your bride? The glass of the window shattered, the shards flying like deadly snowflakes as I collapsed to the floor. What is it trying to say? The world faded to black. Memories, sharp and cruel, pierced the darkness. I was a child again, surrounded by my so-called siblings. Give it back. Why should I? How could I? They sneered, dangling my favorite doll just out of reach. But it's mine. I stammered, tears welling in my eyes. The eldest boy grabbed me, his face twisted in a hateful scowl. So what if it's yours? He spat. It's only because your lowly mother climbed into someone's bed that you managed to enter our family. You despicable bloodline. Little slave, they swarmed me, their taunts echoing in my ears. Little slave, you're nothing but a little slave. Suddenly, a small white creature hovered in the air nearby. Its blue eyes regarding the scene with disdain. What boorish tricks of torment. It appears this human race has no divine power, otherwise why wouldn't she use it? It thought to itself, it's whatever. Moving on, one of the boys spotted it. A bird, what's a bird doing here? He picked up a stone, a cruel grin spreading across his face. But before he could throw it, the little dragon flicked its tail, sending a pebble of its own flying. Bullseye. The boy yelped, dropping his rock. The little dragon floated smugly, but then its body froze midair. Why can't I move my body? Could this be a binding stone crafted by the grand sorcerer? I saw the little creature, helpless and struggling, and my heart went out to it. My hands reached out on their own, gently scooping it up. Its eyes widened in surprise as I held it. "Your eyes are so captivating," it whispered, its voice filled with awe. Our moment was shattered by my sister's cruel voice. "Oi, what's got you looking so happy?" The other children gathered around, their faces masks of mockery. "You can't even take care of yourself, yet you still meddle in others' affairs." My sister leaned close, a wicked glint in her eye as she whispered to her brother, "John, I have a spectacular idea. If it happens to go awry, we can pin the blame on her." John drew a small, sharp dagger. My sister pressed the cold steel against my throat. "Come now, ever this little creature's tale." Tears streamed down my face as I shook my head, my voice a choked whisper, "And no." She yanked my hair, forcing my head back. "You truly are a good-for-nothing slave." With a swift, curl motion, she sliced through my long hair. And in the same instant, John's dagger flashed. The little dragon fell from my arms, limp and still. I stared at the gash on my forehead in the reflection of the dagger, my mind numb, and once again, I wasn't able to protect another life. "What is even the purpose of my life? I beg of you, please tell me my purpose." Darkness exploded from me, a torrent of despair and rage. What is that? It's a curse. Run away, let's get out of here." Tears traced paths down my cheeks as I drifted in the darkness. Then consciousness returned. I was lying somewhere soft, surrounded by flowers. A man with flowing silver hair leaned over me. "Oh, you're awake." His voice was a low, gentle rumble. What is going on, and who's this guy?" My heart hammered in my chest. Wait a minute. His eyes, azure blue as gemstones, with long silver hair. A horrifying, impossible thought took root in my mind. He looks the same as the very dragon who took me captive earlier today. My eyes widened as the truth slammed into me. The terrifying dragon with glowing blue eyes. And this impossibly beautiful man. They were one and the same. He's a descendant of the dragons, a fated dance under a blood-red moon, a beauty held in the arms of a monster. This was a destiny she could never escape. In the sprawling, sun-drenched capital of the dragon territory, life seemed to move at a gentle pace. A fluffy ginger cat peered into a fishbowl, its emerald eyes fixated on the darting shapes within. It leaned closer, whiskers twitching, as a single black fish broke the surface with a splash. But the reflection staring back wasn't that of a cat. It was her own terrified face, her lilac hair fanned out in the water, and behind her, the piercing eyes of the silver-haired dragon. A single thought screamed through her mind, "I have to run." Her eyes snapped open, her body jolting upright. The dream, the memory, it was all too real. Panic seized her, cold and sharp. She had to get away now. She scrambled to the edge of the bed, but a hand, strong and unyielding, clamped down on her shoulder, pinning her in place. "No, wait." Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of pure terror. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the face of her captor. "This is the dragon territory. There aren't any other humans here." His voice was a low whisper against her skin as he leaned in, his tongue darting out to lick the shell of her ear. He told her she couldn't leave. The horrifying realization crashed down on her like a tidal wave. I'm going to be eaten. He was going to devour her. But the dragon simply tilted his head, a look of genuine confusion on his handsome face. She passed out, he wondered, watching as her body went limp, collapsing back onto the silken sheets. The sheer terror had been too much for her fragile human body. He gazed down at her, his icy blue eyes tracing the lines of her face, the tear tracks still glistening on her pale cheeks. He leaned down, his tongue gently lapping at a single tear. His voice was a soft murmur, laced with disappointment as he mused that human tears were tasteless. Not like the deep-sea clans whose sorrow transformed into precious pearls. But then his expression softened. He supposed he could forgive this imperfection because he was quite taken with her. His fingers brushed against the delicate skin of her neck, and he leaned in closer, inhaling deeply, her scent. It was truly delightful. He held her sleeping form, a strange tenderness in his touch. He whispered to the unconscious girl that once she woke, he would tell her his name. And then in the depths of her darkness, a memory bloomed. A sunlit garden, a handsome man with the same silver hair but gentle eyes, offering her a bouquet of blue flowers. "His name is Eric," he had said, his voice warm and full of adoration. "I've fallen for you, Pearl." A radiant smile had lit up her face. "Eric," she'd cried, her own heart soaring as she confessed she'd fallen in love with him too. A promise of marriage hung in the air, sweet and perfect. But the memory shattered as a hand pushed open the door to her chamber. A blond man stood there, his eyes wide with shock at the sight of the shirtless dragon king holding her. He stammered an apology for interrupting, but the dragon's voice was cold as ice as he simply ordered the man to speak. The newcomer, Anthony, was seething internally. "You bastard," he thought, "why aren't you wearing any clothes?" The dragon replied with regal indifference that as a dragon, he had no need for such things. Anthony pressed, arguing that since he brought a human here, he should at least try to follow their etiquette. The dragon's piercing eyes narrowed. "Is that all you have to say?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. Anthony's face grew serious. "No," he said, "Tata of the Troll clan is attacking again." A flicker of annoyance crossed the Dragon King's face, before being replaced by a cold resolve. A massive, ethereal blade materialized in his hand. his toned body radiating raw power. He gripped the hilt, his knuckles white. A warrior ready for the hunt, Anthony could only watch as his king prepared for war. In an instant, the dragon was cloaked in dark, elegant battle attire, a savage grin spreading across his lips as he roared for his troops to move out. He led a fearsome army of dragons and knights, crashing into the troll forces like a storm. He stood tall amidst the chaos, a fallen troll at his feet, and declared his troops were ready. With a flick of his wrist, he unleashed a torrent of crackling blue energy, a devastating attack that sliced through the enemy ranks, leaving nothing but dust and silence in its wake. Later that night, Pearl sat by the window, gazing at the full moon. I haven't seen that dragon all day, she thought, a tiny seed of hope sprouting in her chest. Perhaps now, while he's gone. A voice from the doorway cut through her thoughts. You're awake? She whipped her head around, her heart leaping into her throat. He was back, leaning against the doorframe, his fine clothes were splattered with blood, a fresh cut bleeding on his cheek. He looked exhausted, yet his eyes burned with a terrifying intensity. He began to walk towards her, his spiky, reptilian tail dragging behind him, leaving a sickening trail of crimson across the pale, polished floor. He stopped right in front of her, his blood-stained hand reaching up to cup her face. His voice was raw, a desperate command that chilled her to the bone. Say you love me. Her whole body was trembling uncontrollably. He noticed, his head tilting as he asked in a low voice if she was shaking because she was scared. The question sent her spiraling back into the darkness of her past. She remembered the jeers, the scornful eyes as they doused her in frigid water, calling her a dirty witch and ordering her to be locked away. Her crimes, being born with a curse she couldn't control, she was nothing but a monster to them. After the incident at the Holy Palace, she was imprisoned for what felt like an eternity. Trapped in a cold, dark cell, they would come to torment her, their faces twisted with hate as they lashed her with whips and spewed curses at her. And when the pain and fear became too much, when the dark flames of her curse burst forth, they would scream and scramble away like frightened rats. Human, the dragon's voice yanked her from the horrifying memory. What are you thinking about? She stared at him, her mind a whirlwind of confusion and fear. What? Did he say something before? Then it hit her, his demand, say you love me. Love, what is this dragon talking about? How am I supposed to respond? If I give the wrong answer, will he eat me? Her panic must have been written all over her face because he suddenly sighed, his expression unreadable. Enough, he said, his tone softening slightly. Let us go eat first. Before she could process his words, he took her by the hand, pulling her to her feet. All she could muster was a dazed, huh? He led her from his grip firm but not painful. She looked up at his profile as they walked, her thoughts still reeling. They walked down a long, opulent hallway, her bare feet silent on the cool stone. Are we really going to dine together? The thought was so absurd it was almost laughable. The simple act of eating dredged up another painful memory. While she was locked away, it had never occurred to anyone that she too needed food. The gnawing hunger and constant discomfort had driven her to the brink, causing her powers to erupt uncontrollably. One day, dazed and weak, she had stumbled into the kitchens. The chef on duty didn't recognize her as the cursed child. He saw only a small, hungry girl and treated her as a normal child someone had brought in. He had given her a bowl of warm soup. Tears streamed down her face at the memory of that simple kindness. It was the most delicious meal she had ever tasted. Back in the present, she followed the dragon, his hand still holding hers. They walked side by side, the chain on her ankle a constant reminder of her captivity. But as she looked at the powerful being beside her, a strange thought entered her mind. Perhaps he isn't as frightening as I once thought. Her hope was short-lived. He stopped before a table laden with food and with his bare hands tore off a massive chunk of raw, bloody meat. As she stared, her stomach churning, he held the gruesome offering out to her, his expression expectant. Eat up, he urged. It's tasty. Her mind went completely blank. Raw meat. Her eyes widened in absolute horror. He nonchalantly licked the blood from his fingers, his blue eyes glinting in the dim light. The most terrifying possibility imaginable slammed into her. Could it be? Human flesh? Is he threatening me? Is this a warning of what will happen to me if I disobey? A wave of despair washed over her. I'm so stupid, she thought, her heart shattering into a million pieces. So stupid to expect warmth from a flesh-eating monster. Clenching her trembling hands, she forced herself to speak, her voice a fragile whisper. Might I prepare a meal myself? A final, desperate plea, at least in the end. She thought, another tear tracing a path down her cheek. I'll be able to taste some proper food one last time. Taking a deep breath, she steeled her nerves. Be brave, Pearl. She stood before him, awaiting his judgment, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. The Dragon King looked down at her, his expression unreadable. Then he slowly raised his hand and gently patted her on the head. In a cute little thought bubble, he hugged a chibi version of her, gently chiding her for being too skinny and telling her she should eat more. She retorted that she wasn't a standard poodle. Could it be that she had misunderstood him all along? A preview of what's to come shows her timidly holding up a spoon to his lips, a blush on her cheeks as she asks him to open his mouth. Is this the beginning of a very strange romance? The air grew thick, heavy with a presence she could feel pressing in on all sides. His arms snaked around her, caging her against the cold, hard table. A tremor shot through her entire body. Asterisk, I'm so scared. Asterisk, her mind screamed, a frantic, silent shriek. Every instinct was telling her to flee, to run as far and as fast as she could. But where could she go? She was trapped, a little bird in the dragon's clutches. A tear squeezed from the corner of her eye, a single drop of pure terror. Memories flashed before her eyes, a lifetime of loneliness, of being unwanted, a forgotten doll in a dark, empty room. But then something shifted. The arms around her weren't crushing her, they were holding her. Her violent trembling began to subside. Eric watched her, his piercing blue eyes tracking the subtle change. What was she so afraid of, he wondered. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. It didn't matter, she had stopped shaking. She stopped shaking because of him, and that was all that mattered. Later, under the soft glow of the moon filtering through the large window, an awkward silence stretched between them. A magnificent steak dinner sat before her, the aroma filling the air, but her stomach was a knot of anxiety. She couldn't eat. She couldn't even breathe properly, not with him staring at her like that. His gaze was intense, unblinking, as if he was trying to see straight into her soul. What did he want? Why was he still here? Her heart hammered against her ribs. Did he want a taste of her food too? As if summoned by her thoughts, his hand shot out, reaching directly for the steak on her plate. Asterisk, he's using his hands. Asterisk, the thought barely registered before her own body moved on pure instinct. Her hand flew out, smacking his away from the plate with a sharp crack. Oomph, the sound echoed in the silent room. She froze, her eyes widening in horror. What have I done? What have I done? Panic seized her, cold and absolute. This was the dragon, the terrifying ruler of this land. Had she just sealed her own fate? But instead of incinerating her where she sat, he simply looked at his hand, then back at her, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. Her fingers, still trembling, wrapped around his wrist. She couldn't let this spiral, she had to fix it. She pulled his hand back, her mind racing. Whatever, she thought, pushing down the fear. Taking a shaky breath, she picked up a spoon, her voice a nervous squeak as she told him he had to use a spoon. Gathering every ounce of courage she possessed, she looked him in the eye and pleaded for him to please open his mouth. He stared at her for a long, agonizing moment. His gaze was unreadable, his expression a perfect mask. Then slowly his lips parted. Her hand shook as she brought the spoonful of food to his mouth. He took the bite, his eyes never leaving hers. The sound of him swallowing was deafening in the silence. How is it?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. He was quiet for a moment, and then a slow, predatory grin spread across his face, a flash of white teeth against his lips. His voice was a low purr as he declared it was delicious. Her eyes widened in shock. Would you like more?" He just nodded eagerly, tilde. And so she fed him the entire pot, every last bite. She had cooked all that food, and now her own stomach rumbled with hunger, but she hadn't gotten a single morsel. As she held the now empty pot, he was still there, his arm wrapped possessively around her waist. His voice rumbled against her ear as he asked if there was no more. She flinched, stammering that she had to do the dishes, and tried to excuse herself. But his grip tightened, pulling her flush against his chest. Never mind that, he growled, his breath hot on her neck. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. He told her that right now she was supposed to say she loved him too. What? The word escaped her lips in a puff of confusion. He seemed almost amused by her bewilderment, explaining patiently, as if to a child, that no, he was supposed to say, "I love you" first. And then, he continued, she was supposed to say she loved him back. What is this dragon talking about? Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion. He gently tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his gaze. His beautiful, terrifying eyes held hers captive as he spoke the three words that would shatter her world. "I love you, human." Love, the word echoed in the deepest, darkest corners of her mind. A cruel, mocking laugh answered it. Love, don't be ridiculous. A memory, visceral and bloody, ripped through her consciousness. The sneering faces, the pain, the absolute despair. The word love was a lie, a poison. A dark, violent energy erupted from her, swirling and lashing out uncontrollably. Suddenly, the grand magic circle of the castle flared to life, bathing the halls in an ethereal golden light. A handsome blonde man burst into the room, his eyes wide with alarm. What's going on? Why did the magic circle activate all of a sudden? His slitted reptilian eyes narrowed as he took in the scene. There on the floor was the girl, her dress singed and blackened, her body trembling. And beside her sat Eric, clutching his head in pain. The blonde man's voice was grim. "So this is her power," he stated. "She still can't control it." He strode forward, placing a hand on Eric's shoulder and telling him that was enough. Eric staggered to his feet, leaving the girl crumpled and alone on the cold floor. She stared at her singed dress, at the dark marks on her skin. "It's over. This is definitely it. I'm done for." The old taunt screamed in her head, fire-wielding witch, cursed being asterisk. But the blonde man, Anthony, knelt beside her. He told her she was supposed to chase after him. "That's what it says in the books he reads. You don't get it, do you?" he asked, his golden eyes filled with a strange pity. He explained that Eric, the sole heir of the dragon clan, chose to bring her here despite the fierce opposition from his own people. Anthony was right, she had been so caught up in her own fear and self-pity. Wallowing here would solve nothing. I have to do something. A new resolve hardened in her eyes. She pushed herself to her feet and walked out of the room, leaving a surprised Anthony behind her. As she left, he smiled faintly, murmuring congratulations on becoming the dragon's bride. He knew the truth about the imposing dragon lord. He sincerely loves you, Anthony thought, and wants to take you as his bride. All you have to say is, I love you, and he'll give you everything. But as she walked, her mind was a tempest. Why? Why me, a girl with nothing, a girl who was cursed and feared? This love, it came from nowhere, so sudden and inexplicable that it was hard to believe. She found him by the window, clutching himself as if in pain. He was muttering to himself, his voice tight with some suppressed emotion. He felt like he wanted to eat her right now. He turned, his eyes blazing with frustration. Why hadn't she chased after him as soon as he left? Why did she stay and talk about useless things with Anthony? His Highness was introducing you, she stammered. He cut her off, his voice sharp as he commanded her to come here. She hesitated for only a second before her feet carried her towards him. He immediately pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. His voice was softer now, tinged with a vulnerability she'd never heard before. He told her that whatever she wanted to know about him, she could always ask him directly. Then he scooped her up, his movements weary. All right, he murmured, sleep with me for a little while, I'm tired. He carried her to the bed, the room bathed in the soft morning light, and laid them both down among the plush pillows. As she lay beside him, his voice was a soft whisper against her ear. Eric, he began, his eyes closed. He confessed that she was the first person who, despite getting burned by his flames, still dared to come close to him. A strange feeling bloomed in his chest. My heart feels weird. He watched her as she finally succumbed to exhaustion, her breathing evening out in sleep. As she sound asleep, he thought, a faint smile on his lips. His gaze traveled down her body, lingering on the tattered, burnt remains of her dress. Aren't these the clothes she was supposed to marry someone else in? A dark, possessive look crossed his features. With a decisive tug, he lifted the singed fabric. A sharp, ripping sound broke the silence as he tore the dress away. It's time to change them, he decided, his eyes gleaming with a new, dangerous light. A new beginning was about to be forced upon her, whether she was ready for it or not. A strange, tickling sensation roused her from the depths of sleep. Her eyes fluttered open, still heavy with drowsiness, as a voice, smooth and deep, cut through the morning haze. He was awake, and not only was he awake, but he was here, looming over her, holding something lacy. His words were casual, almost bored, as he stated it was perfect timing, he needed her help wearing this. Liu's mind was a confused fog. She was lying on the cool floor, her lavender hair fanned out like a halo around her head. And sitting over her with an impossibly long, silver-scaled tail resting beside him was the Dragon King himself. What was happening? She tried to sit up, her voice a weak murmur as she apologized, still feeling so drowsy. But as she moved, she felt a strange coolness against her skin. The strap of her beautiful new dress slid effortlessly off her shoulder, and her eyes widened in confusion. The fabric pooled around her waist, leaving her completely exposed from the waist up. A jolt of pure, undiluted panic shot through her veins. Why was she naked? Her hands flew up to cover herself as a blush exploded across her face. A tiny, chibi version of Eric appeared in her mind, explaining with a shrug that her old clothes were annoying, so he'd ripped them off. But the real Eric, the terrifyingly handsome man in front of her, simply held up her delicate innerwear, his brow furrowed in genuine confusion. He asked her how this was supposed to be worn. Her mind blanked. This man, this king, had no idea what a bra was. She stammered, begging him to please give it back, but he didn't move. Instead, he leaned in closer, his silver hair brushing against her bare shoulder, his piercing eyes locking onto hers. His voice dropped to a low, dangerous purr as he asked her again, "How do you wear it?" Just as her heart was about to pound out of her chest, a loud, obnoxious voice shattered the tension from outside the door. It was Anthony. He was yelling for Eric, announcing that he was coming in. A tick mark of pure annoyance pulsed on Eric's temple. Anthony began a countdown. 3, Liu scrambled, desperately trying to pull the dress up to cover herself. 2, her hair flew around her as she panicked. 1, the doors burst open. And Anthony strode in, only to be met by a terrifying, dark silhouette of a furious Dragon King. He shrieked in terror as Liu used the distraction to flee, her heart still hammering against her ribs. She found a quiet hallway and stumbled upon a tiny, glowing figure with translucent wings. "Hello, beautiful lady," the creature chirped. Liu stared, her fear momentarily forgotten. A fairy, the little being puffed out his chest proudly, introducing himself as Huru. Sir Anthony's companion. Liu covered her mouth in awe, whispering that it was her first time seeing a fairy, that he looked just like the ones from her father's books. Huru beamed, clearly flattered. He then said something that made her breath catch in her throat. He believed His Majesty Eric would grant any wish she had. A wish, anything she wanted. The thought echoed in the sudden, dark silence of her mind. Her hand clutched the cloak she had wrapped around herself. What did she want more than anything? The answer was a raw, painful ache in her chest. "I want to go home." She drifted towards a window, her hand reaching for the curtain. Home, but as she looked out, a crushing weight settled in her heart. Would there be anyone waiting for me? Her family had sold her. Her home was no longer a sanctuary. It was just an empty house filled with bitter memories. With a sigh of resignation, she turned away from the window. She told Hoodoo she was grateful for his help with her hair and asked where they were going for the meal. She followed the little fairy into a grand dining hall, sunlight streaming through the massive windows. At the long table, Anthony and Roddy were already seated, with Anthony complaining loudly that in Eric's eyes, they were no different than his enemies. Eric, looking regal and bored, simply cut him off, asking where that human was. Just then, Roddy spotted her, a cheerful grin on his face as he waved. "Oh, there she is." Liu stood hesitantly at the entrance, her hair now adorned with beautiful yellow flowers, looking every bit the part of a princess. Eric's gaze fell upon her, and for a moment the icy coldness in his eyes melted away completely. He stood and walked to her, taking her small hand in his. His voice was a soft whisper, meant only for her, as he murmured how beautiful she was. But before she could even process the compliment, a tiny, childlike version of Eric suddenly clung to her dress, looking up with wide, pleading eyes. He whined that he was hungry, that he wanted to eat her cooking. The request was so unexpected, so domestic, that she immediately panicked, blurting out that she would go right away. Anthony scoffed from the table, muttering that for someone learning etiquette, she was still so rash. Roddy immediately elbowed him, hissing that he was being too rude, that he'd scared her. But it was Eric's voice that silenced them both. An icy glare shot towards Anthony, his voice dangerously low as he asked if he wanted a beating too. Anthony flinched, immediately bowing his head and stammering an apology as Roddy twisted his. Eric simply let out a quiet laugh before turning his attention to the room. He slammed his hand on the table, and his voice boomed with authority. "Enough, listen up." He declared that the giants, their enemies, should settle down for a while. And then he dropped the final, earth-shattering announcement: "Therefore, the human and I are getting married." Liu froze, the world tilted on its axis. Married? To him, her mind went completely blank. Later, the dragons were buzzing with the news. Anthony, ever the instigator, leaned towards a silent Eric at the table. "So how was it?" he asked with a sly grin. "You consummated your marriage with her, right?" Roddy looked on with morbid curiosity as Anthony pressed, asking how it felt to do it with a human. Eric just stared back, his expression one of complete, utter confusion. "Consummate? What does that mean?" The room fell silent. Anthony and Roddy both choked on their food, sputtering in disbelief. You don't know," Anthony shrieked, his face turning red. "You went through all that trouble to bring her here, you get married, and you don't even know what that is." Before Eric could respond, a soft voice interrupted them. Liu stood there holding a tray with a perfectly cooked meal, her cheeks flushed as she shyly said she'd finished making it for him. She placed the tray before him, and his entire demeanor shifted. A slow, wicked smirk spread across his lips. He leaned in, his voice a seductive murmur that sent shivers down her spine. "Feed me," he commanded, "just as you did yesterday." The other dragons groaned in disgust, complaining that he couldn't even eat by himself anymore. Ignoring them completely, Liu nervously picked up a piece of savory meat with a fork. As she lifted it to his lips, her hand trembling slightly. As he opened his mouth to take the bite, a massive golden dragon head appeared outside the window, its eyes glaring at them with open contempt. It was one of the clan leaders judging her. Her blood ran cold. She could hear them thinking, "She looks so weak, I could crush her with one hand." Her fork clattered against the plate as she trembled, whispering that there were so many scary dragons outside. A warm hand suddenly covered her eyes, shielding her from the terrifying sight. Eric's voice was a low, protective rumble right beside her ear. "Don't worry, I'm here with you." As he spoke, magnificent white wings unfurled behind him, a clear and defiant message to any who dared to threat his bride. Her eyes widened beneath his palm, her cheeks burning. "Is he protecting me?" He took the fork from her hand and calmly finished the bite, completely unfazed. He then took her hand in his grip firm and reassuring. "All right, let's go," he said. "I want to take you somewhere." As he led her down a grand hallway, her mind was a whirlwind of confusion. What am I to him? He scares me, but he protects me. He buys me new clothes and makes me eat. A ridiculous thought popped into her head. Am I his exclusive emergency food source? She shook her head, trying to clear the crazy thoughts. Maybe I'm going crazy. But as she felt his hand holding hers, their footsteps echoing in the silent hall, she realized with a start that she felt less scared now. They stopped before a massive, ornate door. He told her to stand back. He took a deep breath and blew a gust of impossibly cold air, flash freezing the entire door in a layer of frost. He pushed it open, and a wave of Arctic air washed over her. "So cold, what is this place?" She shivered violently, instinctively pressing herself against him for warmth. A smirk touched his lips. He was pleased she knew to hold on to him. For a moment, she just clung to his shirt, trying to stop shaking. And then, just as suddenly as it came, the biting cold vanished. "It's not cold anymore." Realizing she was plastered against him, she flushed and tried to pull away. But he was faster. His arm snaked around her, pulling her back against his chest. "Why are you running?" he growled in her ear. She stammered that she thought he liked his personal space. He leaned in so close she could feel his breath on her neck. "Says who?" His fingers gently tilted her chin up, forcing her to look at him. Her heart hammered in her chest. He's still so scary. He seemed to read the fear in her eyes, and his expression softened slightly. He told her to stay there, that it was safe since no other dragons would dare come in. He had some business to attend to, he explained, turning to leave. He gestured towards several large, ornate eggs resting on pedestals around the room, noting that they seemed to like her. He asked her to put some oil on them from the nearby cans. As he walked away, his mind drifted back to Anthony's words. "I consummate the marriage." He remembered reading about it in a book. It described the act as something deeper, more fierce, a collision of souls and bodies. He touched his lip thoughtfully, a flicker of something primal in his eyes. But with that weak human body of hers, could she even handle it? Back in the frozen chamber, Liu cautiously approached one of the massive eggs. Her eyes widened. Wait a minute, is this egg moving? A small crack appeared on its pristine surface, accompanied by a soft sound. A second later, the sound grew louder and the entire egg began to shake violently. The crack spread like a spiderweb across its shell. Something was about to hatch. A gentle thud echoed through the grand hole. Pearl's head snapped up, her lavender eyes wide with alarm. A massive, pearlescent egg, intricately decorated with swirling red patterns, was rolling right for her. She gasped, scrambling to catch it just in time. But then another, this one adorned with gold, bumped right into it. The two eggs began to jostle and knock against each other, a silent but aggressive argument playing out in her hands. Her brow furrowed. Were they fighting? A soft smile touched her lips as she hugged them close to her chest. A gentle warmth emanated from them, calming their little squabble. She cooed at them, her voice a soothing balm. "Don't make a fuss," she whispered, her smile serene and motherly. "I'll apply oil on every one of you." She settled on the cool marble floor. The precious eggs nestled in her lap. Dipping her slender fingers into a small bowl of fragrant oil, she prepared to give them a gentle polish. They deserved the best care, after all. She hummed a little tune, her heart feeling lighter than it had in ages. But as she reached for the first egg, a dark, viscous drop splattered onto the back of her hand. What was this? Before she could even process it, an explosion of violent purple energy erupted from the floor. The force of it was immense, a raw, untamed power that pulsed with rage. Far away in a library stacked to the ceiling with ancient tomes, that same rage was brewing. A young, red-headed dragon with a scaly tail lounged carelessly across a desk, fast asleep amidst the scattered books. A handsome blonde man, Anthony, stood nearby, looking utterly exasperated. The young dragon shot up, scrambling over to Anthony and clinging to his arm like a limpet. His eyes were wide with a mischievous, greedy light. "Can I catch someone back just like His Highness did?" He whined, his voice full of envy. "It doesn't have to be a human. I want to get laid and have some dragon eggs too." He pressed closer, wrapping his arms around Anthony's waist. His freckled face beaming with a hopeful, cheeky grin. "How about it?" he pleaded. Anthony's elegant eyebrow twitched. Without a word, he lifted his hand and snapped his fingers. A brilliant, golden magic circle flared to life beneath the young dragon's feet. "What are you doing? Wait!" The boy cried out, his eyes widening in panic. A blinding light engulfed him. His body shimmered and shrank, his clothes pooling around him as the magic reshaped his very being. When the light faded, a tiny, pouting child stood in his place. Anthony looked down, his lips curled into a smirk. "Helping you remember your original form," he said coolly. "As long as no new eggs hatch, you'll always be the youngest dragon in the tribe." The little boy's face crumpled, tears welling in his furious green eyes. "Getting laid dragon eggs," Anthony scoffed. "You're still just a little brat. That was the last straw." "Anthony," the child shrieked, his voice filled with pure rage. "I'll kill you." He launched himself forward, tiny fangs bared. "I'll bite you." But before he could make contact, a new presence filled the room, cold and commanding. Anthony barely blinked, effortlessly grabbing the child by his tail and holding him upside down. "That's enough," he said, his voice dropping. "Go get yourself something to wear." He gestured with his head towards the doorway where the imposing figure of Mule now stood. "His Highness is here to discuss important matters." The little dragon could only huff in frustration, crawling away with his tail dragging behind him. The room fell silent. Mule's gaze was intense as he addressed his subordinate. "How do I consummate the marriage?" he asked, his voice low and urgent. Anthony's smirk returned. "You're in quite a rush to ask," he mused. His expression then turned serious. "Consummation is not necessarily a good thing," he warned. "What if she can't produce dragon eggs?" He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "If she can't fulfill the important responsibility of reproduction expected by the elders of the tribe?" "If that's the case?" The air crackled with unspoken threats, but Mule's response was not what he expected. A terrifying, dark aura exploded from the Dragon King. Shattering the library's calm, books flew from shelves, papers swirled in a vortex of raw power. "This isn't her problem," Mule roared, his eyes glowing with a feral light, veins popping around his temples. "She doesn't need to lay dragon eggs, nor does she need to reproduce." Back in the hall, the violent energy slammed into Pearl. Oh no, her eyes widened in terror, this dark power. It felt like it was burning everything it touched. "If this continues, it'll burn the eggs." The two eggs began to rattle and jump as if in agony. "Huh?" she cried, watching them skitter away. No, her heart hammered in her chest. This couldn't be happening. She lunged forward, her only thought to protect them. She frantically began counting the damage. 3, 4. Her voice trembled. 5. She slumped over, her head resting on the floor in despair. So many cracks. What am I going to do? I'm definitely done for now. The sound of approaching footsteps made her freeze. Someone's coming, her blood ran cold. The terrified eggs jumped into the air as if trying to flee. Where are you going? A deep voice called out. It was him's Mule. He appeared at the end of the hall, his silver hair like a halo in the dim light. He took a step forward but stopped dead when he saw her face. The sight of her tear-streaked cheeks made his own expression crumble. His voice, once cold and commanding, was now laced with raw panic. What happened? Why are you crying? He was at her side in an instant, his large tail curling on the floor beside him as he knelt. His hands hovered, unsure, before gently cupping her face. Are you hurt? Where? Let me see, he demanded, his eyes scanning her frantically for any injury. And no, she stammered, overwhelmed by his sudden, intense concern. In one swift motion, he pulled her into a powerful embrace, crushing her against his chest. Don't cry, he murmured into her hair, his voice a low rumble, then his tone darkened. Whenever you want to kill someone, just tell me. Pearl froze in his arms. Was he worried about me, or was that a warning? His grip tightened slightly. Pearl, he said, his voice dangerously soft. Crying won't do you any good. Escaping and hiding the truth will only make me more angry. The words sent a chill down her spine. Images of her stepmother flashed in her mind, the cold glares, the constant kneeling, the endless punishments for perceived failures. He must hate cowardly acts too, she thought, her heart sinking. She had to tell him. Taking a shaky breath, she finally showed him the eggs. They're all badly cracked, she whispered, her voice thick with guilt. I'm sorry, she cried, bowing her head, bracing for the inevitable explosion of his wrath. But it never came. Instead, he just looked at her, his head tilted in genuine confusion. So what? He asked, his voice gentle. Why do you have to apologize? He reached out and tenderly stroked one of the damaged shells. These eggs still haven't hatched after 100 years. A few cracks won't hurt. Pearl's eyes shot open. She watched in horror as his finger traced a long crack. Don't do that, she yelped, grabbing his hand. It's going to break. He stopped, his gaze shifting from the egg to her panicked face, and a strange softness filled his eyes. He then held out a small, leather-bound book to her. His voice echoed in her memory from his earlier conversation in the library. This book contains the answers to your questions. He had been reading from it, his voice thoughtful. Consummation is similar to consuming the other into your stomach. Humans only seem to confirm their love after this. Now he leaned in close, his warm breath ghosting over her ear. I'm a bit jealous, he confessed, his voice a low whisper that sent shivers down her spine. You've never hugged me so seriously before. Her mind short-circuited. Is he jealous of an egg? He pulled her closer, his long, powerful tail wrapping protectively around her as she clutched the cracked egg to her chest. Her eyes fluttered closed, her face flushed as his intoxicating scent filled her senses. He gently lifted a hand, his thumb stroking her cheekbone as his piercing eyes drank her. Wait for me, Pearl, he murmured, his voice thick with a promise that made her heart race. I'll give you the gift you want. His hand moved to cover her eyes, shrouding her in a gentle darkness as he leaned in, his lips just a breath away from hers. His lips crashed down onto hers, a desperate, possessive kiss that stole the air from her lungs. Heat flooded her cheeks, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. What was happening? Just a moment ago they were talking, and now this overwhelming sensation. Her mind went completely blank. He pulled back just as suddenly, his silver hair brushing against her cheek, his hand cupped her face, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. His eyes, the color of a winter sky, were blazing with an intensity that made her tremble. Wait, don't run, he commanded, his voice a low growl. But her feet were rooted to the spot, her mind reeling. Run? Where could she possibly run to? Just then, a sharp crackle drew her attention downward. The egg. It was hatching, red veins of light spread across its surface. But the Dragon Lord was not pleased. His grip tightened slightly, his voice dripping with irritation as he snarled, You're with me and you're still distracted by this? Before she could answer, he leaned in again, but this time it wasn't a kiss. He bit her lip. A sharp, surprising sting that made her gasp. Just keep your eyes on me, he demanded, his glare locking onto hers. He was angry, so angry. She covered her mouth, the spot where he'd bitten her tingling. Why did he suddenly get so mad? He even bit me. He didn't give her time to think, grabbing her wrist and pulling her along with him. Come with me, he ordered, dragging her through the grand, empty halls. Meanwhile, in a shadowed corner of the castle, a cloaked figure held a similar cracking egg. A sly smile played on their lips, that which was right. After all, this human actually is somewhat useful. The figure's voice was a low whisper, filled with sinister intent. From now on, we stick to the plan until you're no longer of use. Back in the sunlit room, the Dragon Lord stopped. He turned to her, and in his hand was a dagger. Her eyes widened in shock. He held it out to her, the hilt ornate and beautiful. Here, take this. A weapon? Why was he giving her a weapon? He saw the confusion on her face and his brow furrowed. Don't like it? He asked, his tone almost petulant. Then I'll go catch a dwarf and have them forge you a custom weapon. What kind do you want? Her mind was spinning. She took the dagger, her fingers trembling as they closed around the cool metal. I can really take it, but this is a weapon. The last few days flashed through her mind. It had all felt like a dream. Abducted, yes, but her situation before wasn't really any better. Here with him, she had actually slept well for once. She ate real food, wore fine clothes made of silk and lace. But the fear was always there, a cold shadow in the back of her mind. Is he really still planning to eat me? The image of giant, sharp teeth filled her vision, but now he was giving her a weapon, a tool she could use to defend herself. Maybe he actually means it. Could it be true? Could she really trust him? Her eyes, shimmering with unshed tears, lifted to meet his. Can I really have this? His gaze was intense, unreadable. Turn around, he commanded softly. She obeyed, her back facing him. He stepped closer, his body heat warming her through the fabric of her dress. His hand settled on her waist, and she could feel the faint, scaly texture of his long tail brushing against her legs. His other hand came to rest gently on her stomach. His fingers splayed across the thin fabric. His voice was a low rumble against her ear as he murmured, "You're really so thin." His words sent a jolt through her. Her mind raced, questioning everything she thought she knew. Would a dragon who supposedly wants to eat me really eat the small portions I cook every day without complaining? Would he show me the secret passages in his lair? Giving me a map to escape? Would he keep sending me new clothes, even helping me put them on himself? Would he give his prey, a human like me, a weapon that could actually hurt him? He had even gone so far as to declare to his entire court, "I'm going to marry a human." Her thoughts were interrupted as she felt him fiddling with the ribbons on her dress. What are you doing?" she squeaked, her face flushing. He continued to untie the knot, his voice casual. "Your clothes got burned by the black fire again, of course you need new ones." Burned? Oh right, she looked down at the singed fabric. The realization that he was about to undress her sent a fresh wave of heat through her. I can do it myself," she stammered, mortified. He simply paused and said, "Oh." There was a moment of silence. He was still standing so close behind her. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. His question came low and serious, cutting through the tension. Why aren't you afraid of my black fire?" The question hit her like a punch to the gut. Memories flooded back. The temple incident, the terror in everyone's eyes as they were burned by her flames, their souls damaged, some driven to madness. The accusations, the hatred, "You're a fire witch, you deserve the harshest punishment." That's why they feared her, avoided her, rejected her, even her own family. His hand suddenly covered hers, his grip firm and warm. "Afraid?" he asked again, his voice challenging. "Then try releasing that black fire right now." Her breath hitched, panic seized her. She looked at their reflection in the mirror, her eyes wide with terror. I can't control it, I might hurt you again." He leaned in closer, his lips brushing her ear, his words a comforting balm on her frayed nerves. "Dragons aren't afraid." He held her gaze in the mirror, his expression unwavering. "Among the 9 nations, no flame is more terrifying than dragon fire. If you can't believe in yourself, then believe in me." His words wrapped around her a promise of safety, of acceptance. She stared at their reflection, his powerful form shielding her smaller one. "I believe in you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "But I can't control it, I can't release it." He sighed, but it wasn't a sound of annoyance, it was patient. "Never mind," he said gently. "I'll wait a bit before showing myself, then you'll see that I'm not afraid." His tone was so earnest, like a child wanting to prove how brave he was. A tiny, genuine smile touched her lips for the first time. "All right, I believe you," she said, her heart feeling a little lighter. Then gathering her courage, she added, "So could you also trust me and let me change my clothes by myself?" He blinked, then a faint smile touched his own lips. Oh, he let her go. All right. As he walked out, he glanced back at her over his shoulder, a thoughtful, almost soft expression on his face. But as the door closed, his mind was flooded with a vision. A beautiful woman, dressed in royal finery, reaching for him with a desperate smile. "Your Highness," she called. The memory vanished as the real woman's voice called out to him, "Your Highness." She was standing there in a simple but elegant new dress. He shook his head, clearing the strange vision away. "It's fine, let's go back to the bedroom." His mind was made up. "I have to confess quickly, then hurry up and have the wedding." His eyes scanned her new attire. It was simpler than the others he'd given her. It covered her chest completely, hiding the faint, delicate veins he'd found so alluring. His eyes narrowed slightly. Such a shame. But then another, darker memory surfaced. A vision of her from 3 years ago, broken and bloodied in a ruined, lavish gown. He quickly pushed the thought away. Still, it's better than how she looked then. It's just good that she's alive. "Your Highness," she said, pulling him from his thoughts. "Thank you for the clothes you sent." "Do you prefer simpler clothes like these?" he asked, genuinely curious. She nodded. "Ah, yes, simpler clothes suit you better, Your Highness, it seems you prefer." He cut her off, assuming she was talking about her own tastes. I do like them, but if you prefer simple ones, I'm not against it." She shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "No, I just think Your Highness's beauty doesn't need jewels or gold to enhance it." The words struck him like a bolt of lightning. He froze, his mind went utterly blank, a single glorious thought echoing in the silence. She said, "I'm good-looking." Without another thought, he began unbuttoning his shirt, his scaly tail wagging with pure, unadulterated joy. "Okay, I need to move faster." He had a plan. He shed his human skin, his form shifting and growing. Gotta hurry and grab the gift, then confess to her. He thought, launching himself into the sky as a magnificent silver dragon. Far below, 2 of his retainers watched him go. The blonde one sighed. "He really went to get the gift, you're done for." The red-haired one began to panic, but his companion was already forming a plan. "Not necessarily, we definitely can't stop him now, we have to find that human." The redhead paled. "Visiting his new bride behind Eric's back, that's just asking for death, right?" The blonde man's eyes hardened with resolve. Letting Eric run wild will only make things worse. We won't gain anything out of that human either, hurry. But while the dragon raced to claim his bride's heart, a dark ceremony was unfolding back at her family home. Father, I have a bad feeling about today, her brother murmured, but his words were ignored. His stepmother's voice was sharp and cruel as she addressed his father. Marrying her off to the old lord already brought shame to our family, and now this? To restore our reputation, this blessing ceremony must be completed. She fanned herself furiously, her face a mask of contempt. How dare the commoners gossip about our noble family, and that damned girl, even after being eaten, she still disturbs our peace. The Duke's voice was cold as ice. We can skip the tedious preliminary rituals, he announced to the priest, and just complete the final rite for the deceased. A junior priest dared to speak up, but your grace. The Duke cut him off without a shred of remorse. Perhaps she's already in hell, his wife cackled with glee. Exactly, that evil black fire, maybe it was part of a deal she made with the devil for her soul. It's better to end this farce as soon as possible. A sudden commanding voice sliced through her tirade. What nonsense are you all talking about? The heavy tread of armored boots echoed through the church. All heads turned to see the girl's older brother, flanked by royal knights, his face a thundercloud of rage. He stormed towards his parents, his voice booming with fury. She's your sister, she's your family. He drew his sword, the steel singing in the silent hall, his eyes burning with a cold fire. Who says she's dead? This is the tale of the bride who raised the evil dragon. A story of twisted love and dangerous secrets. Beneath a stormy sky, a fate was being sealed. One that would lead to a question echoing in a gilded cage. A single word pulsed through Pearl's mind as her eyes fluttered open. Why? The room was opulent, but it felt like a prison. Why are you locking me up too? She thought, a cold dread seeping into her bones. Where was she? A shimmering blue barrier pulsed around her, trapping her. Eric's voice, cold and distant, cut through the air. He called it a containment spell, a room no other dragon could enter. He was leaving, he said, his back turned to her. He ordered her to stay here and behave. Her heart shattered. Why wasn't everything fine just a minute ago? She reached for him, but he was already gone, disappearing through the magical wall. Wait, her plea was swallowed by the silence. Then, a flicker of orange caught her eye. Fire, why is there fire? The room around her dissolved, replaced by a searing, painful memory. The sharp sting of her hair being yanked brought tears to her eyes. It was her sister, Modier, her face twisted in a mask of pure rage. Modier held a burning piece of paper, her voice a venomous shriek as she demanded to know why he got to write letters to Pearl. What even are you? She screamed, do you deserve anyone's affection? I'll burn your pretty face. Modier, what is she doing here? Pearl's mind reeled, the past and present blurring together. A letter? Who sent me a letter that made Modier so furious? The memory shifted again, the heat of the fire replaced by the cold grandeur of a ballroom. This place, it's a ball. Her mother stood beside her, presenting her to a royal highness. But the memory was tainted with humiliation. Someone had whispered that she was merely a pretty ornament, a clumsy girl who would only step on her partner's toes and embarrass him. And they were right. The heir to the dukedom had chosen Modier, of course. He always chose Modier. As a final, cruel joke, after hearing something Modier said, a young guard was summoned to dance with her instead. She knew it was a mockery. She had never learned how to dance. Her foot landed clumsily on his, and shame burned her cheeks. She stammered out an apology, her eyes fixed on the floor. But his voice was gentle. He asked if she was all right, calling her esteemed Lady Pearl. He introduced himself as Jacob. Back then, he was just a minor noble from a fallen house. But she later heard he became a distinguished knight. It was his letter, the one that made Modier completely lose her mind. And in the end, she was the one punished, locked up, just like today. Why did I suddenly dream about all that? Pearl thought, her hand flying to her forehead as she awoke in the present. Was it because of what Rhodey just told her? His words echoed in her mind. He said only she could talk Eric down, that she had to coax him, make him think she liked him so he'd stop causing trouble. Her heart clenched. Rhodey had said Eric captured her relatives to make her happy, and he asked if she wasn't going to save them. Save them? Isn't he trying to kill me? Rhodey's face was earnest, desperate. He insisted Eric would never kill her, not after what he gave up for her. Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion. Why would he want someone like me, a witch? Rhodey's words were so vague. What did Eric give up, and relatives? Who is he talking about? Meanwhile, far away, Modier rode in a carriage, her face a mask of fury as she spat out the words, wretched woman, they're all wretched. Her carriage rolled to a stop, and her eyes widened in shock. Sir Jacob, it's Sir Jacob. She demanded to know why he was there, having heard he was still on the front lines fighting demons. But Jacob walked right past her, his gaze fixed forward, his expression like stone. He actually ignored me. The humiliation was a physical blow. She watched as he approached her father, the Duke, his voice ringing with conviction. He vowed he would find her trail, slay the evil dragon, and bring Pearl back. The Duke offered him a fortune in jewels, a favor from the king. Jacob's response was ice. He didn't need jewels or favors, but he had one condition. He brought a pink ribbon to his lips, a ribbon that belonged to Pearl. When the time comes, he demanded, relinquish Pearl's engagement and allow me to make an eternal vow with her. If you find her, you can take her hand, the Duchess conceded, her face tight with anger. But Modier exploded. Who gave you the right to decide that? Back in her carriage, her rage was a storm. Wretched woman, she screamed again and again, they're all wretched. Suddenly, a shadow fell over the carriage. The horses screamed in terror as a massive, scaled creature descended from the sky. The world erupted into chaos as the carriage was smashed to pieces. People scattered, their faces pale with fear. A dragon's come to kill us all. The crowd shrieked as the magnificent beast landed in the street. And as the tale of the bride and her dragon continues, a new chapter of peace seemed to begin, at least for a moment. What is that? Pearl wondered, a strange tickle on her nose pulling her from her thoughts. A butterfly, a beautiful blue butterfly, rested there for a moment before fluttering away. A voice, deep and familiar, broke the silence. You seem like a crybaby. Her head snapped up. Eric, he was looking down at her, his expression unreadable. He said he liked her this way too, but tears mean she's sad. Her face flushed as she stammered that she wasn't sad at all. I just had a bad dream, she insisted. He seemed to accept her excuse. Well, that makes sense, he murmured. He leaned closer, his silver hair brushing against her cheek. His voice dropped to a whisper. When you're with me, you shouldn't feel sad anyway because I love you. Her heart leaped into her throat. She scrambled to her feet, flustered, saying she was a little hungry, and asked if they could go outside now. He stood, a small smile playing on his lips. He told her he'd brought back a gift and they should look at it first. A gift? Could it be the relative Rhodey mentioned? Could it be mother? Hope, fragile and terrifying, bloomed in her chest. He led her through a field of ethereal butterflies into a place of impossible beauty. I can't believe this place exists. It's so beautiful. But her awe turned to fear as he raised his hand. With a grunt of effort, he shattered a magical barrier, revealing a dark space beyond. Eek, she cried, stumbling back. From the darkness came the sound of someone coughing violently. A figure emerged from the dust, cloaked in dark, tattered clothing. Pearl's blood ran cold. The woman looked up, her eyes burning with a familiar, terrifying hatred. Modier, why is she the gift? Her sister's voice was a ragged scream. It's you. Modier lunged, her face a mask of insanity. You're actually still alive, you filthy wench? Before the attack could land, Eric's arm wrapped around Pearl's waist, pulling her back. Modier's attack hit nothing but air and she stumbled forward. Are you all right? He asked, his voice a low growl. Yay, Pearl whispered, her body trembling. On the ground, Modier seethed, her knuckles white as she pushed herself up. Why won't this woman just die? And why does she always land on her feet? The memory of Jacob asking for her hand in marriage flashed through Modier's mind. Eric turned to Pearl. Can I speak to her for a moment first? He asked, his tone deceptively calm. Fine, but his next words were chilling. Still, I suggest you use the dagger I gave you, gut her. Pearl shook her head, horrified. You know perfectly well I won't do that. Taking a deep breath, she faced her sister. Modier, she began, her voice shaking slightly. How's mother? The question was a spark on gasoline. Mother, Modier spat the word like poison. Your mother is a filthy wench too. All she ever did was betray our family's interests, that whore. Pearl flinched. Don't you dare insult my mother. Modier's voice rose to a fever pitch. She even dared swear on the Fumetti family name to hand your engagement over to Jacob. Pearl's mind went blank. I don't understand what you're talking about. Eric's eyes narrowed, his expression turning thunderous at the insult. You are disgracing our family, filthy wenches. All of you, Modier shrieked. But Eric had heard enough. He pulled Pearl against his chest, his hand gently covering her eyes. His voice was a possessive rumble meant only for her. You are my bride, he declared. Anthony said only you and I are meant to be engaged. Modier stared, her jaw dropping. Engagement? What is he talking about, Anthony? Her shock quickly morphed back into pure, unadulterated rage. Her face twisted into a grotesque snarl. You should have married that damned old man and died slowly, tormented in his bed. She screamed, her sanity completely unraveling. Royal Knights, that dragon, you're all blind idiots. A horrifying realization dawned on her face, followed by a malicious grin. I get it now, you must have been colluding with the dragons all along. I'll go back and tell father, we'll throw both you and your mother in jail. She raised her hand, a dark ring glinting on her finger. Go to hell. A blast of violent purple energy shot from the ring, striking Pearl square in the chest. She gasped, looking down in horror as a crown of thorns materialized on her stomach, its magic searing her skin. What is this? A furious shriek ripped through the air. Go die. A torrent of violent, crackling purple energy erupted from the shadows, aimed directly at Donna. Her blood ran cold. She recognized that malevolent aura, that swirling ring of death. It's Manhwa venom. The words caught in her throat, a choked whisper of terror. Memories flooded her mind, pages from her father's ancient texts flipping frantically. Manhwa venom, a cursed magic that could completely erase any trace of a person, leaving nothing behind, not even a memory. She really wants to kill me. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Her own mother wanted her to cease to exist, but Eric was a blur of motion, his body a shield between her and oblivion. Modier, he growled, his voice a low, protective rumble. I can't let you go back. His resolve was iron, his gaze fixed on the attacker. He would not let Donna return to the human world, not when her own mother would try to kill her. With a roar, he thrust his hand forward. Here, take it back. The venomous spell reversed, hurling back towards its caster with furious speed. A scream of pain echoed through the garden as the witch was thrown back, her body slamming into the ground. But before Eric could finish it, a flash of blue light intercepted the attack. Anthony, it's you again. Eric's eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint of silver fury. This human dared to interfere again? You're looking to die? He snarled. He was done being patient. He was done with these insignificant humans trying to kill his bride. I just want you to stop trying to kill people in front of her. Eric's voice boomed, his patience utterly shattered. He didn't have time for this. With a single dismissive wave of his hand, he roared, "Shut up." A blast of raw power sent Anthony flying, crashing into the dirt. But another voice cried out, "Eric." It was Rhodey trying to stop the carnage. "Don't fight here, this is Donna's flower garden." But Eric was beyond reason. He advanced on Anthony, his intent murderous. "Get out of the way," he bellowed at Rhodey. The young dragon looked desperately at Donna, his eyes pleading. "Let us handle her," he promised. "We'll make sure she never returns to human territory. Only you can make him stop." Donna's heart hammered against her ribs. She had to stop this. "Eric, stop," she cried out. Her voice seemed to cut through his rage. He froze, his hand raised to strike, his long white hair whipping around him. He turned to look at her, the bloodlust slowly receding from his eyes. A memory surfaced in his mind. Donna's gentle smile as she told him that if he and his brothers came back alive, she would turn their mother into flower fertilizer. Donna watched as the witch, her own mother, was dragged away, unconscious but alive. A strange mix of emotions swirled within her. He clearly wants to kill me, she thought, a cold dread seeping into her bones. But now that she's still alive, somehow I feel relieved. Am I too cowardly? Rhodey watched her conflicted expression, his own face soft with understanding. Of course not, he said gently. You are a kind human, educated, used to solving problems through the law, not with personal fights. His gaze swept over the other dragons, a silent understanding passing between them. But, he continued, his tone shifting, I also hope you can understand us dragons. He looked up at the vast, wild sky. We have no laws, only slaughter and conquest, death and survival. This is the continent of Asterda where anything is possible. The weight of his words settled on Donna. She looked down at the dagger she still held, a relic from her world, a world of rules and order. This was a different place entirely. With a sigh of resignation, she sheathed the weapon. I won't interfere like this again, she said, her voice quiet but firm. She looked at the dragons, her expression resolved. If you want to kill her, I have no objections. Rhodey's face broke into a relieved smile. Lady, he said, his voice full of admiration, death is the just reward for the wicked. We are never merciful. Later at the dinner table, the tension was thick. Pearl, their tiny dragon companion, tried to break the silence. Everyone, wait, this is my fault, she chirped. She turned to Donna with a mischievous grin. So what, didn't she say we could eat her cooking too? Pearl wants you to feed me. But Eric was having none of it. He gently took the utensils from Donna's hand. You eat, he said, his voice surprisingly soft. I'll help you wipe your face. Anthony watched them, a smirk playing on his lips. These humans are really interesting, he thought. In just a few moments, they figured out their place. It looks like he's bringing her relatives over for revenge, not for an engagement. His gaze turned dark and calculating. Who should I capture next? He remembered the rumors, how she dared to swear on the name of the Fumetti family and hand over her engagement. How dare she try to escape him? Back in the present, Eric suddenly grabbed a fork, his knuckles white. Donna looked at him confused. Jacob, he whispered, the name a venomous hiss on his tongue. Who is Jacob? The question echoed in the silent room, filled with a sudden, terrifying menace. The air crackled with a jealousy so potent it was almost visible. Who is Jacob? Eric repeated, his voice dangerously low. I'm going to tear that Jacob guy to pieces. He shot to his feet, his chair scraping against the floor. Donna's eyes widened in alarm, she remembered. A hazy dream, a gentle memory, Jacob offering her a flower. Is this love? She had wondered. I don't know, but he's one of the few people who's ever been kind to me. The memory was sweet, but the reality of Eric's rage was terrifying. No, she cried out, grabbing his arm. If Eric really goes after Jacob, he'll ruin him. Her mind raced. Muddle might be lying. Jacob might not even have a marriage contract with me. Please don't act rashly, she pleaded, looking up into his furious eyes. He glared down at her, his jaw clenched. Are you? He snarled, his voice dripping with possessive fury, pleading on his behalf. And no, Donna stammered, shaking her head frantically. I just think he's lying. There's no way this is real. Anthony, ever the opportunist, stepped in. Just send some elves to investigate, he suggested smoothly, holding a piece of bread. He gave Donna a reassuring smile. You're still their daughter. They wouldn't just give your hand away without reason. Jacob is the captain of the Howling Knights, a man of status. It won't be hard to find out the truth. But as he spoke, Donna saw that Eric still didn't look happy at all. Anthony leaned in, whispering to her, Don't worry, I've heard stories about this man. Guys like him only get a human's marriage contract for one reason. Someone traded for it. He gave Eric a sly look, so there's definitely a chance for you to act. Eric ignored him, pulling Donna onto his lap possessively, his tail wrapping around her. You're mine, he declared, his voice a low growl in her ear. No one else gets to have you. As she sat there enveloped by him, she noticed something. His hair, it smells like blood. A thought sparked in her mind, a way to soothe the savage beast. Can I do your hair? She asked softly. His eyes just lit up, a spark of childlike delight in their depths. Does that mean yes? Later, as he sat before her, stripped of his heavy leather armor, he looked different, younger, softer. All right, go ahead, he murmured, a towel draped over his magnificent hair. I'm going to start with the hair oil, she said, her hands already reaching for the small pot. Okay, he replied simply, closing his eyes in contentment. He's actually pretty easy to please, she thought with a small smile. It's just this affection he has for me. I don't know when it might end. Her mind drifted back to a conversation she'd had with Anthony. Tell me what's been up with him lately, he'd asked. She sighed, recounting Eric's increasingly possessive behavior. One moment he won't let her cook for Rhodey, the next he won't let her feed the animals. She didn't understand it, but Eric's thoughts were a raging storm. Giving food to someone else. Brushing a cat's fur, why can't she just be kind to me? Why can't all these things? They should be just for me. The jealousy was a physical ache, a crack forming in his composure. Back in the garden, he approached her, his expression still troubled. You're here, she said with a smile. But she saw the lingering storm in his eyes. Why does he still look so unhappy? Maybe I should try cheering him up. A brilliant blue butterfly landed on her finger, an idea sparked. She gently guided his hand to hers, showing him the delicate creature. Look at this butterfly's pattern, she said, her voice soft as petals. It's just like your eyes, they're both blue. He stared at the butterfly, then back at her, his intense gaze making her heart flutter. She leaned in closer, a playful smile on her lips. Who's prettier, she whispered, her eyes locking with his, me or the butterfly? The air in the garden was sweet, filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the gentle flutter of 1,000 wings. A brilliant blue butterfly landed softly on her hair, and Eric's voice, a low murmur beside her, asked a strange question. Was she prettier or was the butterfly? Before she could even process the odd compliment, his eyes, cold and calculating, fixed on the delicate creature. He offered to turn it into a specimen for her, maybe trap it in a glass case. Her heart seized. No, she cried out, a horrified gasp escaping her lips. Why would he want to cage something so beautiful? Just as she was about to protest further, a guard skidded to halt before them, his voice laced with panic. Your Highness. Winter was coming, the werewolves had crossed the border and the defected dragons were with them. The peaceful moment shattered. Eric's gaze hardened instantly, the playful man gone, replaced by the ruthless Dragon King. He told the guard he was heading out, but not before his hand moved in a blur. A sphere of crackling blue magic materialized around the butterfly, trapping it in an eternal, shimmering prison. He pressed the glowing orb into her hands, a gift. Her fingers trembled around the warm glass. She could only watch, speechless, as he turned and strode away without another word. The silence he left behind was deafening. Soon the entire castle felt hollow, drained of life. A sudden, reckless idea sparked in her mind. They were all gone. This was her chance. Her gaze fell upon the massive front gate. Could she actually escape? Her heart pounded with a frantic, hopeful rhythm. She rushed to the towering doors, her small hands pushing against the cold, unyielding metal. But the moment her fingers made contact, a violent surge of energy erupted from an invisible barrier, throwing her backward with brutal force. She landed in a heap, the air knocked from her lungs, the reality of her situation crashing down on her. What was she even thinking? Like they would just let her leave? And even if she did get out, where in this desolate world would she go? As she clutched her precious dragon egg, a familiar scent drifted to her nose. A faint, sweet oil like his hair. An image of him standing behind her, a rare moment of closeness, filled her mind. He was so much like a child sometimes, she thought with a flicker of fondness, not so different from the egg she was trying to protect. He just needed a little coaxing. But she immediately crushed the thought, a cold wave of fear washing over her. No, what was she thinking? This was the Dragon King, a monster who could devour her and her baby in a single heartbeat. Her eyes scanned the grand, empty hall, landing on a large portrait of a blonde man with the same sharp, draconic eyes. A strange thought surfaced. She had never seen a single female dragon here. If there were no females, how were eggs born? How did they hatch? She shook her head, dismissing the mystery. It wasn't her problem to solve anyway. Suddenly, a smooth male voice echoed through the hall, calling her by a name she hadn't heard in ages. Miss Bossifine Pearl. She froze, her blood turning to ice. She whipped around, but the hallway was utterly empty. Who was there? A soft, chilling chuckle answered her, seeming to come from the wall itself. Her eyes, wide with terror, darted back to the portrait. It couldn't be. The man in the painting, he was speaking. His painted lips curled into a smirk as he remarked how lucky he was that she hadn't managed to leave. Or he wouldn't have had this opportunity to talk to her. Instinct took over. She fumbled for the small dagger hidden in her dress, her mind racing. Stay calm, dragons are possessive. Eric wouldn't let anyone else harm his property, so I should be safe, right? The man in the painting seemed to read her thoughts, his voice softening. He told her not to be afraid, that no dragon would ever harm her, because Eric loved her. More than that, he declared, his golden eyes gleaming with an unnerving intensity. She was there. Hope, the word echoed in her mind as memories flooded back. Anthony insisting he loved her. Rhodey telling her she had no idea what he'd done for her. Eric himself, his voice raw, whispering, I love you. But it all felt like a lie. She was nothing more than that butterfly he had trapped, a beautiful thing to be admired in a cage, ready to be turned to dust at his slightest whim. Just then another voice, a woman's this time, whispered from the painting. Looks like things are a bit more complicated this time, Miss Bossifine Pearl. The man in the portrait spoke again, his voice urgent. My descendant is calling you through me. A searing red light erupted from the floor beneath her, a complex magical circle burning into existence. The world tilted, the ground vanishing from under her feet as she plunged into a swirling vortex of energy and light. She landed with a bone-jarring thud, the air thick with the smell of smoke and blood. She was in some kind of rocky wasteland, the sounds of a fierce battle raging nearby. Before she could even get her bearings, a guttural snarl ripped through the air right behind her. A massive, slavering werewolf with glowing red eyes lunged from the shadows. In the distance, Anthony and Rhodey moved cautiously through the ravaged woods. The roars were deafening. "Crap," Rhodey cursed. "Why were werewolves here?" Anthony's expression was grim. Was she still alive? He muttered that they needed to find her, and quickly. As they pressed on, the metallic stench of blood grew overwhelmingly strong, coating the air, staining the very ground beneath their feet. They followed the scent, their hearts pounding with dread, until they broke through the trees and froze, their eyes widening in utter disbelief. There, amidst the carnage, sat Lily. She was perched atop the corpse of a giant wolf, her delicate dress stained crimson, her lavender hair matted with blood. What on earth happened here? Rhodey breathed, stunned. Did this fragile human girl kill a giant wolf barehanded? Shaking off their shock, they knew they couldn't wait. They had to get her out of there. Moments later, they were airborne, their powerful dragon wings carrying them through the sky. Lily, now conscious in Anthony's arms, weakly asked if they were the ones who brought her here. Where were they going? There was no time to explain, Anthony said, his voice tight with urgency. Eric has lost control. He needs you. Now. They landed with a jarring impact, explosions rocking the ground around them. This is the place, he told her. Eric is right over there. Lily's eyes followed his gaze to a whirlwind of destructive energy and savage fury. What do I need to do?" she stammered, her body trembling. "Try calling out to him." Anthony's instruction was simple yet terrifying. Don't use a title, just say his name. Taking a shaky breath that felt like her last, she screamed his name into the chaotic battlefield. "Eric!" The sound cut through the din, and for a split second, the rampaging beast faltered. His head snapped in her direction, his eyes no longer the icy blue she knew, but a blazing, feral red consumed by bloodlust. He saw her. "He's coming," Anthony screamed. Run, but he was too fast. A blur of white and red, a whirlwind of rage. And it was too late. Before she could even move, he was on her, a guttural snarl ripping from his throat. "Damn it!" Rhodey yelled, helpless to intervene. Eric's mind, lost in a haze of battle fury, saw only an illusion, another enemy to be destroyed. "Die, illusion!" He roared, his claws lashing out, his hand closing around her throat. A terrifying dark energy, black fire, crackled around his fingers, ready to obliterate her. But as the chaotic power touched her skin, it fizzled, vanishing into nothing. It didn't harm her. He froze, the rage in his eyes flickered, replaced by utter confusion. Black fire, he thought, his grip loosening. She's real. The realization hit him like a physical blow, and he stumbled back into the shallow water, the madness finally receding. How could she be here? He stared at her, his mind reeling, his monstrous tail gently, instinctively wrapping around her waist and pulling her close. The fight drained from him, replaced by a wave of crushing remorse. His voice was a choked whisper, broken and raw. "I'm sorry." He looked up at her, the last traces of the monster fading from his tormented eyes, leaving only a man begging for absolution. "Can you forgive me?" And as his heartfelt plea hangs in the air, the chapter leaves us with this poignant scene. The creators have also released a special bonus announcement for fans, showing a recap of the most intense moments. The revelation that Lily is their hope, her quiet despair, his desperate apology, and beautiful bonus art that hints at the deep connection between our leads. They've even announced a special giveaway for their loyal readers. A small thank you for all the support as this dark and enchanting tale continues to unfold. A story of a fragile bride and the dragon she must tame. The chaos began to settle, but the tension in the air was still thick enough to choke on. Eric turned to his men, his voice sharp and commanding despite the blood staining his shirt. They needed to clear the border to ensure every last werewolf had withdrawn, but his gaze softened just for a moment as it fell on Pearl. He told her the magic circle was cooling down and that she had to come with them. As the group began to move, Eric stopped, his body angled towards Pearl. His voice was low, almost a murmur, yet it cut through the silence. "Just now," he said, his silver hair glinting in the pale light, "I didn't hear your answer." Pearl looked up, her mind still reeling from the fight. What was he talking about? He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming her senses. His hand came up, gently resting on her arm, his touch sending a jolt through her weary body. His eyes, a piercing shade of blue, locked on hers as he whispered, "You didn't say you forgave me." The question hung between them, heavy and suffocating. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Forgive him after everything, after the fear, the kidnapping, the constant danger? Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion, but then his hand moved, his thumb gently caressing her cheek, wiping away a smudge of blood. "But," he murmured, his voice softening with an emotion she couldn't name, "I understand now." Before she could process his words, he was leaning in. His face just inches from hers. Time seemed to stop. All she could see were his eyes, deep pools of silver and blue reflecting her own startled expression. And then his lips met hers. The kiss was surprisingly gentle, a soft pressure that sent warmth spreading through her entire body, chasing away the chill of the forest. He pulled back, his forehead resting against hers, their breaths mingling in the cool air. "How about this?" he asked, his voice a husky whisper. You still don't want to forgive me, do you? Pearl's face erupted in a blush, her composure completely shattered. She stammered, trying to find her voice, insisting that wasn't it at all, but his intense gaze held her captive. I just think. She began, trying to explain that he didn't have to go this far. But her words were cut off as he kissed her again, deeper this time, stealing the very breath from her lungs. He pulled her into a sudden, fierce embrace, burying his face in the crook of her neck. His voice was muffled against her skin, laced with a vulnerability she had never heard from him before. Sorry, he murmured, human emotions are too complicated. He confessed that they troubled him, that he didn't understand them. He held her tighter, his long silver tail coiling protectively around them in the water. Then came the question that made her heart stop. Can you teach me? He finally let her go, turning to wade out of the water. He told her to go up first, saying he would clean everything up. Back on the shore, Rhodey was already there, his hands glowing with healing magic as he tended to her wounds. Pearl could only stare at Eric's back, seeing him in a completely new light. The way he stood there, so calm and ruthless, every line of his body screaming power. It was like he was born to conquer continents. In that moment, she understood why they called him the ghost who swept across the 9 nations. A chilling realization washed over her. Even if Jacob arrived right now, he wouldn't be able to take her away from this man. A fresh wave of panic seized her. Jacob, she had to find a way to contact him, to warn him not to be reckless. He had such a bright future, a life of wealth and power ahead of him. He couldn't throw it all away for her. Later, inside a lavish tent, she found the fearsome conqueror looking like a pouting, angry cat, his beautiful silver hair hopelessly tangled. The contrast was so jarring, it was almost comical. A small smile played on her lips as she approached him. Let me help you cut it, okay? She offered softly. He just looked up at her, his big blue eyes wide and sad, and gave a tiny, defeated She tried to work through the knot with a golden comb, but it was no use. She would need scissors. Can I trim it for you? She asked. As she held the ornate golden scissors in her hand, a dark thought slithered into her mind. He was so still, so trusting, completely defenseless around her. An image flashed before her eyes, a twisted reflection of herself holding the blades to his throat. If she just moved her hand, would she be able to kill him? Could she finally be free? Her hand trembled. No, she couldn't. The memory of him writhing in agony, consumed by his own dark magic, was still too fresh. His hair had burned just like this, its life force draining away in an instant. If he hadn't dodged that black fire, he would have been reduced to ashes, all because of her, and yet he never blamed her. With a soft snip, the tangled lock fell away. He looked at her, a question in his eyes. Are you serious? He asked. She just nodded, but his pout returned with a vengeance. He grumbled that she hadn't made him anything tasty today. Then he turned his head away, his voice petulant as he accused her of looking at someone else and ignoring him on purpose. Pearl tried to protest, but he cut her off. I don't care, he declared, turning back to her with a demanding look in his eyes. I deserve a reward as compensation. Before she could ask what he meant, he leaned in, his lips brushing against hers. His voice dropped to an intimate whisper that made her shiver. Pearl, no matter what you think, I'll keep saying it over and over again. He sealed his words with a kiss, pushing her down onto a mountain of glittering gold coins. I like you the most. Her mind went blank. She could only gasp out a weak, wait. He pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes, his own burning with an intensity that stole her breath. He whispered it again, his voice raw with emotion. I like you the most, Pearl. His hand rested on her stomach, a possessive yet gentle way. She tried to push him away, her voice a panicked whisper. Wait. Her mind scrambled for an excuse. There are dragons outside. She breathed, hearing a distinct rustling from beyond the tent flap. Outside, 2 young dragons pressed their heads against the fabric, their ears twitching, only for the sounds within to abruptly cease. Suddenly, the flap was thrown open, revealing a towering, furious Eric, his eyes practically glowing with rage. What are you guys doing? He snarled. The 2 dragons froze in terror before being unceremoniously dragged away into the night. With a long-suffering sigh, Eric returned to the tent, only to find Pearl had already fallen fast asleep, curled up under the covers. But her sleep was far from peaceful. A nightmare gripped her, pulling her into its dark depths. She was clutching a thorny, pulsating sphere, her voice trembling as she begged an unseen horror not to come any closer. An image of a blood-soaked Eric dying flashed behind her eyes. Then monstrous 2-headed wolves with glowing red eyes lunged from the shadows. A scream tore from her throat as she fell into an endless black abyss. Just as despair consumed her, a brilliant light shattered the darkness. A familiar figure wrapped her in a warm, protective embrace, holding her tight against a backdrop of 1,000 stars. It was him, it was Eric. His voice echoed in her dream, a soothing balm on her frayed nerves. Pearl, don't be scared, he whispered, his arms a safe haven. I'll be right by your side to protect you. Her eyes fluttered open to the sight of Eric holding her hand, his expression grim as he stared out at the werewolf camp. It's all my fault, he thought, his grip tightening, blaming himself for her terror. Suddenly, a piercing alarm shattered the pre-dawn quiet. Enemy incoming, a voice shouted. Eric immediately moved to shield her. Hide here and don't go outside, he ordered, his voice low and urgent. I'll protect you. But before she could even nod, a familiar voice screamed his name. Eric, a figure burst into the tent, sword drawn. It was Jacob. You're all going to die, you bastard. He roared, lunging at Eric. Their swords clashed in a shower of sparks. Jacob's face was contorted with rage as he spat. Remember your duty as a dragonborn. If you can't fulfill it, then hand her over. Pearl watched in stunned silence. What duty? What were they talking about? She spotted Rhodey nearby and rushed to his side. He quickly urged her to hide, explaining his magic was too weak for him to return to his adult form. Don't worry, he added, Eric is strong. Among our generation, no one can surpass him. This generation, the word snagged in her mind. If Rhodey was this generation, then what about the next? A question tumbled from her lips. Why haven't those dragon eggs hatched? Rhodey's explanation hit her like a physical blow. Because we don't have the dragon's flame. As he spoke, the horrifying truth clicked into place. The kidnapping, the duty, it all led back to her. A vision of Eric, beautiful and terrifying with golden wings, holding her close, confirmed her fears. This was why they brought her here. A massive werewolf suddenly vaulted over the fighting men, its claws aimed directly at her. Pearl, Jacob screamed. In a flash, Eric was there, intercepting the beast with a furious roar, a blast of magic erupting from his hands. But Pearl was no longer helpless. With newfound courage, she drew a dagger and plunged it deep into the monster's leg, a fierce smile on her face. Her victory was cut short by a pained cry. She spun around to see another wolf sinking its claws into Eric's back. Blood sprayed from his mouth as he coughed. He staggered, clutching his chest in agony. But even wounded, he was terrifying. A furious aura exploded from him, obliterating the remaining werewolves in an instant.